Monday is a state of mind. Always put on your positive pants and get stuff done. Today is a perfect day to reject Monday blues. Welcome to this edition of Africa Good Morning with myself, Aina Raiza Koya, and Ashwin Mberi. We will be bringing you the news making headlines across SADC.
Absolutely. And today is World Telecommunications Day. World Telecommunication and Information Society Day has been celebrated annually every 17 May since 1969 to mark the founding of the International Telecommunication Union and the signing of the first International Telegraph Convention in 1865. The COVID-19 crisis has not only highlighted the critical role of information and communication technologies for continuing functioning of societies, but has also brought to the fore the startling digital inequalities between and within countries. In light of this year it is celebrated under the theme Accelerating Digital Information in Challenging Times. Here's a clip on that.
Africa, good morning, and here are the news making headline. Zimbabwe court orders Chief Justice to retire in blow of Mnangagwa. Zimbabwe's High Court forced the country's Chief Justice to retire, ruling that an extension of his term by the president is illegal. The ruling is a major setback for President Emmerson Mnangagwa, whose party may pushed through constitutional amendments that critics said concentrated power in the hands of the president. Amidst uproar, Mnangagwa used his new powers to extend Chief Justice Luke Malaba's tenure by 5 years on the 11th of May, 3 days before the justice's scheduled retirement. Judges in Zimbabwe retire at 70, but the recent constitutional amendments gives the president the power to extend the terms of the Supreme Court and Constitutional Court judges by 5 years. The Young Lawyers Association of Zimbabwe and others sued, arguing that the Constitution is also stated that Malamba and the current Supreme Court and Constitutional Court judges cannot benefit from the amendment. Only judges appointed after the amendments can. A panel of 3 High Court judges on Saturday agreed and said Malamba had ceased being a judge and Chief Justice.
All right, and in our next story, hundreds rally in Tunisia in support of Palestinians. Demonstrations were held in Tunis and several Tunisian cities in support of Palestinians and to demand the intervention of the international community to stop the crimes of Israeli forces. The Tunisian authorities condemned an aggression against the Palestinian territories carried out by Israel and called on the international community to assume its responsibilities. Tunis, which currently sits on the UN Security Council, had submitted a draft statement calling on Israel to halt settlement activities, demolitions and expulsions of Palestinians, including in East Jerusalem, the eastern sector of the city annexed by the Jewish state. This statement was not adopted by the Council, which met in an emergency session this week due to the opposition of the United States.
In our next story, Ethiopia cancels June vote citing logistical setbacks. The Ethiopian Electoral Commission announced it was postponing parliamentary elections scheduled for the 5th of June due to growing logistical difficulties without setting a new date. The vote will not take place on the 5th of June, said Electoral Commission Chairwoman Betikena Modiska, saying she could not provide a new date until she reviewed proposals from political parties. She said her commission was behind schedule on finalizing voter registration, training electoral staff, printing and distributing ballot papers, It proved almost impossible to achieve all of these by the dates initially said. Betikena said a new date would take into account the rainy season, which runs from June to September. Addis Ababa said last week only 37 million people had enrolled for the exercise out of a population of 110 million. Conflict in Tigray and ongoing deadly violence in Bengushul and Afar regions have undermined the success of the exercise. Tension over the Nile have also jolted Ethiopia, which is locked in a dispute with Egypt, Sudan over mega dam it is developing on the river. This is the third time the vote meant to usher in a new national and regional parliamentarians is being postponed under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed.
All right, now we move over to Congo as Congo sentences 30 to death over Ramadan clashes. 30 people have been sentenced to death in the Democratic Republic of Congo for their role in the violence against the police that marked the end of Ramadan in the capital Kinshasa, judicial sources said. The verdict was pronounced in the early hours of Saturday morning after a hastily conducted trial that began Friday in Kinshasa. A lawyer confirmed the sentences. They were charged with criminal association, rebellion, assault and battery, as well as attempted murder. 5 people were acquitted. Congo imposed a moratorium on executions in 2003. On Thursday, violent clashes broke out between Muslim worshippers fighting for access to the Martyrs Stadium, Kinshasa's main sports complex, to hold Eid al-Fitr prayers. The hearing was broadcast live on public television throughout the day and lasted until early Saturday morning. The Islamic community of the DRC has been experiencing a succession crisis for several years between the two rival factions within the only association representing the faithful, the Islamic community of Congo. Court is yet to rule on the legitimate leaders. Estimated to be about 10% of the population, Congo's Muslims are mainly located in the eastern regions of the country.
In our next story, Sudan army men held for killing protesters. Sudan's military said it has handed over to the Attorney General the findings of an investigation into the killings of 2 demonstrators at a recent rally that called for justice for victims of violence against protesters in 2019. The Sudan Tribune reported separately that 7 army personnel had been arrested and were due to be handed to prosecutors for interrogation, citing the Attorney General. On Tuesday, several hundred protesters gathered outside the army headquarters in Khartoum to mark 2 years since the violent dispersal at the same location of a sit-in by popular protest movement calling for the departure of former President Omar al-Bashir. Tuesday rally was dispersed by security forces, leaving 2 dead and dozens injured. Sudan has been led since August 2019 by a civilian majority transitional administration, which has promised to bring justice to the victims and their families.
All right, now we move over to Madagascar as Madagascar ramps up COVID inoculations to suppress second wave. Madagascar has started vaccinating its population against COVID-19. The first phase of the campaign is focusing on frontline staff such as healthcare employees, security forces, and social workers. It also includes people in vulnerable groups and those over the age of 18. Madagascar received a shipment of 250,000 vaccine doses from COVAX last week, the first to arrive in the country. Doctors, nurses, and nuns queued up Friday to receive their jabs at the Hira Amefolia Hospital, the largest healthcare facility in Antananarivo, Madagascar, a large island nation of southeastern Africa, which is currently fighting a second wave of the virus that's threatening to overwhelm its health system. The country has had a total of just under 40,000 coronavirus cases, with 748 deaths, according to a tally kept by Johns Hopkins University in the United States.
In our next story, Botswana rhino poaching worsens as government deters rhino poaching in Botswana is getting worse, and the government is not helping the matter in any way due to its split attitude on the crisis. On the other hand, the government of the President Mokgweetsi Masisi, in power since 2018, acknowledges the seriousness of the crisis, but when it suits its administration, they deny the calamity and neglect taking decisive action. Just a few months into the first wave of COVID-19, the World Health Organization declared a pandemic in March 2020. Masisi rang the alarm bell about the deteriorating black rhino poaching epidemic in his country. The Department of Wildlife and National Parks accused Kama of making irresponsible statements and claimed that, in fact, poaching and other crimes linked to wildlife had gone down by 70% since March 2020.
All right, now we move over to Mozambique as mercenary group denies charge of racism in North Mozambique. In the wake of the days-long attack by Islamist extremist rebels on the northern Mozambican city of Palma at the end of March, a private military group contracted by the Mozambican military denies charges that it gave preference to whites when rescuing people trapped in a hotel. Amnesty International charges that the Dyke Advisory Group gave preference to whites over blacks when evacuating people at the Amarula Hotel. The Dyke Advisory Group said Friday that its helicopters rescued 24 people from the hotel, 6 of whom were white and 18 others were black. We stand committed to our human rights obligations as encapsulated in our company policies and are incredibly proud of our team and the efforts they made during this attack to support and save as many of the civilians stuck in the middle of the fighting. This was done at a great personal risk to themselves, they said in the statement.
In our next story, the ANC has been battling to pay its workers their salaries for at least 2 years now. The party was also recently implicated in an alleged tax fraud scheme in which it deducted pay-as-you-earn contributions from employees' salaries but failed to pay this money over to South African Revenue Service. A report by Sunday Times had revealed that relatives of deceased ANC employees have also been unable to claim death benefit payouts and relatives who passed away nearly a year ago. The party and employees have also apparently been loggerheads over the party deducting provident funds and pension funds contribution from their employees without providing evidence that this is being paid to the fund's administrators. There has been no word on whether the party will face action from SARS over the previously mentioned failure to pay over their pay-as-you-earn deductions. SARS said they were prohibited by the law to discuss or comment on the tax matter of their clients.
All right, we move over to the next story, and I really love the title, A Scheme to Make African Art Profitable. African art sales, though they are on the rise, still currently account for less than 1% of the $50 billion global art market. What if there was a way for African artists to profit from their work in perpetuity while also growing their piece of the pie? This was one of the major motivations for Kenyan-based award-winning photographer and filmmaker Rich Alela to auction one of the continent's first crypto art collections using non-fungible token NFTs. His work is facilitated by Picture Images, a digital media company which launched one of its first crypto art NFTs on the continent. The auction is running from April 26 to mid-May and is hosted on OpenSea, one of the world's largest NFT digital marketplaces. I love to see it. I love to see artists being innovative,
yes,
and especially African artists being able to make a living from their work. This is still Africa Good Morning. We have so much more for you after the break. We're going to be talking to the tourism people about what's going on with these vaccination testing. What does it actually mean, and is it important for the tourism industry? So stick around. We'll be back after the break.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. Now, the Tour and Safari Association of Namibia recently launched a COVID-19 testing site for tourists at busy roadblocks on one of Namibia's main traveling routes to make it easier for tourists to get tested. Margot Bishop of TASA explains why this is crucial to make Namibia a preferred tourist destination, and here's more.
A private initiative was recently launched to provide tourists in Namibia with a convenient and easy way to test for COVID-19 before they leave the country. Margot Bishop, Vice Chairman of the Tour and Safari Association of Namibia, is here to give us the details behind their initiative. Good morning, Margot. How are you?
Morning, Ashwin. Well, thanks. Thank you for having me here.
It's good to have you here. Fantastic. So I'm going to go straight into the first question, which should be kind of the obvious question. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating effect on the tourism industry. How has it affected operations or the industry in general?
The effects on the tourism industry were instantaneous and absolutely catastrophic. Prior to the pandemic, about 120,000 people in Namibia were employed in tourism, and 2020 was projected to be one of the best years that we've ever had. As a result of the pandemic, though, we've now seen that thousands of people have lost their jobs right across the tourism value chain, and there are companies that have closed down, that have gone into liquidation and won't be reopening. So to just put this into perspective, it's been a double-edged sword, because our main source market for tourism to Namibia is Europe, the EU. And under EU travel package regulations, if a tour operator cannot supply the holiday that the clients have booked, they have to refund those clients. So your double-edged sword comes in that from March last year, when the world essentially shut down to travel, all new business stopped. But now you also had a situation where bookings that were already paid for, people that were already in country, now had to be repatriated, and those holidays could not be completed as planned. So all of that money had to be refunded as well.
Wow.
So even though we don't fall under that EU package regulations, all of our partners internationally do. So we had to be as flexible as possible to look forward to, a post-pandemic world.
Sure, truly.
So we have had to fall in with those regulations and rules, so it's been catastrophic.
Truly, truly. All right. So while the TSA has, as a result of that, amongst other things, launched an initiative to provide tourists with a convenient option for testing for COVID-19. Could you elaborate on this and tell us why it's important?
Well, everyone that comes into Namibia needs to have a negative COVID test to come in. Now, the same applies when they leave. And we do have laboratories, there are testing, there's swabbing available. What we are finding, though, that if someone's leaving on a Monday morning, trying to find a test at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon was nearly impossible. So the Okahanya Roadblock mobile COVID testing facility is the first one. There will be one opening on the Rehoboth. There's a Simbabasia roadblock as well. And if anyone coming from the north, from Swakopmund, goes through Okahanya in any case, so they can just stop there, have the test done, and carry on, spend their last night in Windhoek, and the results will be emailed through to them. The same applies for anyone coming from the south, from Sossusvlei, Fish River Canyon, Kalahari Desert. They're all coming through Rehoboth, so the same applies. What we'd like to get people to do is pre-book their tests, pre-book and prepay online, and then the details that they put in online actually auto-completes the Ministry of Health forms and the laboratory forms. So when they get to the COVID testing facility, all of the forms are pre-filled out. The nurse comes out to the vehicle to swab them. It takes about a minute, 45 seconds to a minute per person, and then they carry on their way. So it's very quick, very easy. All of this nursing staff have been approved by the Medical and Dental Council of Namibia, and the results have actually been accredited by the World Health Organization. So it is of an international standard.
Yes, indeed. It does sound truly efficient.
Yeah.
And it does create that sense of security, which
Absolutely.
tourists also need when not only when they're about to travel, but when they're around and they need to leave.
Absolutely.
All right, so this is one of the initiatives that are being done to try and make things, at least grease the wheels for the tourism industry,
Yes,
so to speak.
absolutely.
Is there any other projects that's in the pipeline?
At the moment, being a member-driven organization, there's always something in the pipeline. But with regard specifically looking at reinvigorating tourism, I think our next drive has to be vaccination reluctance.
Yes.
There's a lot of international governments are looking at what we are doing in country and basing their decisions on which borders they're going to allow, or which countries are going to allow their citizens to travel to based on what those countries are doing. Just as an example, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in the US, has Namibia on a level 4, which is do not travel. Zimbabwe, by comparison, is on level 2. And the only difference between Namibia and Zimbabwe is that Namibia, we're sitting on just over 40,000 people vaccinated. Zimbabwe are sitting at nearly 500,000 people. So over 3% of their population has been fully vaccinated already. So vaccine reluctance in country is actually hampering our progress in being reintroduced to the world of tourism post-COVID.
Understandably so, and of course there's all the misinformation. And,
correct, yes.
There's many ways people now need to, get people to take that vaccine.
Yeah.
So what do you feel Namibians should do to, to play their part in helping revive the tourism industry? Because as Africans know, particularly people in Southern Africa, if the tourism industry is booming, it's almost impossible for the economy not to be booming.
Exactly, yeah. No, tourism in Namibia specifically, and as you say, regionally, it's a massive part of our GDP. And what we've seen, we believe in tourism, we believe that Namibia as a destination is going to be very sought after post-COVID because we are naturally socially distanced. We have the wide open spaces. And during this pandemic, Namibians have had the opportunity to actually travel around the country. And I know people who've been living here for decades who've never been to Sossusvlei, now they've used that opportunity to actually travel. And posting those images, posting those messages on social media, I think that is just going to feed this pent-up demand for travel.
Yes.
So everyone can actually act as a Namibian ambassador.
So instead of charity begins at home, tourism begins at home.
There you go.
If we can love our home, we can get other people to love it too.
Exactly.
Margot, thank you so much for coming and disseminating that information. And we certainly hope that the tourism industry can, get the support it needs in order to, get back on top as it deserves to be. Namibia is truly too beautiful for the world not to be able to see.
Absolutely agree.
All right, we're just having a chat with Margot Bishop, who is the Vice Chairman of the Tour and Safari Association of Namibia. Africa Good Morning likes to make sure that you stay informed, and we certainly hope that you hang on to each of those words, and particularly the notion that it's time for us to appreciate our home so we can get our home to be appreciated. And also, let's get vaccinated so that we can move from level 4, hopefully to level 1, and just have the world welcome and feel easy about being in the land of the brave. This is Ashwin Betty. This is still Africa Good Morning. Welcome back, and right now it's time for us to take a trip to Zambia and have a chat with Mr. Mike Sichula. Good morning, Mike. How's it going?
It's a lovely morning.
It truly is. We're going to go straight into our first story. Now, Zambia's Vice President Inonge Wina has ruled himself from being considered as a running mate to President Edgar Lungu for the upcoming general elections. That sounds very interesting. Tell us about that.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Inonge Wina, she's aged 80, and she's been the Vice President for the last 5 years. At the time of the death of late President Michael Sata, Mrs. Wina was considered to be the unifier between the factions that had emerged during that period. And she has been in the political arena as far back as the struggles of independence. That's her in the picture during a meeting at the government house yesterday. So during the struggle of independence, she was the wife to late freedom fighter Arthur Wina. So she's been in the political arena for quite some time. And she's also been a member of parliament in Western Province, which during the time of the ruling party trying to get power, they never had enough support. But because of her involvement and her coming on board, the ruling party has managed to penetrate the region in terms of winning. So yesterday she did say at the media briefing that she doesn't have the same energy as she had during the time of the independence struggle, as well as the time she spent through in the civil society movement, and also during the time she has been the vice president, and she thinks it is time she can pass on the baton to a younger generation of political leaders. So because a lot of people were expecting her to continue in that role as a running mate to President Lungu. And to our viewers, today in Zambia, presidential candidates are beginning to file in their nomination papers. We'll bring more details probably on Wednesday this week.
All right. I mean, I understand. I sympathize with somebody who knows when it's time to stop.
Yes,
It's
especially
really,
when they're getting to that age. It's always good to also leave room for the young ones to step in.
Right now, Mr. Sichula, we understand that the ruling Patriotic Front has banned its aspiring candidates from holding public political rallies in view of the coronavirus. I'm wondering, are there any other political parties having rallies during this time?
Yes, in Zambia, political rallies have been taking place. I think from the pictures that I sent yesterday, we can be able to show our viewers that political rallies have been taking place. But during the time of the Electoral Commission of Zambia media briefing, they did discourage political parties from holding political. That's that's the opposition UPND having their political rally. As you can see from the pictures, there are very few people wearing masks. Then the aspect of social distancing is not there. It is for this fact now that the ruling party is telling its candidates to say, can we observe issues of social distancing and all the health guidelines in order to prevent the coronavirus? As we speak now in Zambia, from the time the coronavirus broke out in March 2019, the number of cases have gone up to over 92,000 cases of people that have contracted the disease. The recovery rate is about over 98% because over 90 people have recovered from the disease. Then over 1,200 people have died from the disease. So it is for this fact that political parties are being discouraged from holding such gatherings, as you can see from the ruling party there. And there's actually no physical distancing, as can be seen from the picture. So this is why they have done this, in order to contain the pandemic.
All right. Okay, let's get straight into our last story. Zambia and the African Union have signed a memorandum of understanding on the deployment of police officers to the African Union mission in Somalia. Could you tell us about this, Mike?
The government of Zambia has been deploying police officers as well as military personnel to different countries within the African region and beyond. But on the African continent, the deployment of police officers has not been done using an MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. But this time, this has changed. In the picture there on your right, on your left, that is Zambia's ambassador to Ethiopia, Mr. Emmanuel Mwamba, as well as the AU representative, Banklo Adeo, who entered the African Union. So this the memorandum of understanding now has the situation where the deployment of police officers to Somalia is going to increase from 38, which was the allocation for Zambia, to 160 police officers. So the idea is that whenever the Zambia is sending an MAU that forward, and Zambia commended for having played a critical role in the region to bring stability and independence to many African nations. So this is what the memorandum of understanding is all about.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us all the news from Zambia.
Thank you very much, Ziko Mokwambiri, Africa. Good morning.
Ziko Mopambili indeed. This is still Africa Good Morning, bringing you all the news you need to know happening in the SADC region and beyond. Next up, weather. Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. It's time for us to dive straight into your economic news. In our first story, assessing the impact of COVID-19 on China and African economic relations. Many experts are worried about the amount of debt that Africans are getting from China. Will African countries grow the financial muscle to repay, or will China write off many as debt burdens? Or will there be a doomsday scenario where economic colonization takes place? Cedric Akili Mbeng Metui, a financial sector expert, says the Bank of France has reportedly started transferring foreign currency reserves to a tune of 5 billion euros to the Central Bank of West African states. This process is part of the reform of the CFA franc, which was announced in December 2019 by the French and Ivorian presidents. The transfer happens ahead of a summit French President Emmanuel Macron is holding with African countries to discuss the revival of economic fortunes following the coronavirus pandemic.
In our next story, IMF chief, we ought to support Africa in this genuinely historic moment. Leaders from more than a dozen African countries will attend a summit in Paris today to discuss their financial needs after COVID-19 pandemic. Ahead of the gatherings, the head of the International Monetary Fund, Castellina, has told France 24 the international community must step up efforts to ensure a dangerous divergence of fortunes between advanced and developing countries is avoided. The divergence would mean more security and more stability and lost opportunities for the world economy to grow, she warned. Kristalina said she hoped a plan of 650 billion increase in the funds reserves known as special drawing rights could be used as a way for richer countries to provide more help to those in need.
All right, we move over to the next story. Third wave, harsher restrictions unlikely. This is according to economists. As a third wave of COVID-19 infections in South Africa seems to be inevitable, on Friday, economists were confident that the government would not implement harsher restrictions as the economy cannot afford stricter lockdowns. This week, there was a 46% increase in the number of cases. On Thursday, new cases breached the 3,000 mark of daily infections for the first time in months. The business sector has urged the government to ensure evidence remained the key guide to lockdown interventions. Anchor Capital investment analyst Cassie Dalport said the threat of a third wave on the expected economic recovery was concerning. The economy is expected to rebound between 3.4 and 3.8% this year, following a severe 7% contraction last year. Dalport said of a concern would be the effect further restrictions would have on unemployment, bearing in mind the jobless rate of 32.5%. She said the effect of the first two waves would be felt for a long time. The economy is not in a position where we can afford the harsher restrictions experienced under the previous higher lockdown levels, Dalport said. All right, those have been our economic news stories. Up next, economic indicators.
Thank you very much for watching Africa Good Morning on this Monday morning. Your sport news is still coming up, but right now the Fitness Flex Minute with Janet is here.
Hello everybody, welcome to Flex Minutes. I'm Janet Elhart, your presenter for Flex Now. Today we're not in the studio, we are at Virgin Active here in Windhoek, Namibia. So we're going to start off with some high knees. So high knees, just to get our heart pumping, get our heart rate up. So as far as you can bring them. So this one can work as a warm-up, and it can also work as a really cool workout. So always keep your back straight and bring your knees as high as you can bring them. And then while we are on our feet, we're also going to do some star jumps. So star jumps go up, go down, and go up. So touch the floor as you go down and stretch them out like a star. Cool. So we're going to do your toes. You can do as much as you can. Cool. So, and then after that one, we'll be doing some front side kicks. So this is going to be more control of heart rate. It's going to come down a bit. So front kick and side kick. So bring up, front kick and side kick. So with the jumps, I'm going down our legs. Now we can just get ready again. Cool. So on the other side, front kick to side kick. So that one's really controlled. You want to keep your balance and to the side. That brings us to the end of these minutes. I'll see you in the next one.
In this never-ending world of same, it's easy to just do what everyone else has done. Follow a path that you know will get you there. But where is there? The same place as everyone else? Now, getting it right is good, but it's really about how you get there that makes your story worth telling. Take whiskey, for example. There are ways to make it that have worked for over 1,000 years. There are rules, tradition, and rich history. Mastery built over generations, and we salute them. But we also believe in trying new things. You can't do same and expect to break fresh ground. You need new ideas that build on the old. Like a musician taking a classic track and lovingly rearranging it. New beat, fresh lyrics, creating a totally new sound. Use the old, bring in the new to give it your own spin. Make it better, from mastery to remastery. That's exactly how we came to make our single grain whiskey. Made in a little distillery in a small sleepy town at the mouth of the Bainskloof Pass. A place of beauty, purity and nature. Hardly the whiskey capital of the world, but being small means that you can try things the old guard can't. Our founder distiller knew this. He took sun-kissed South African maize, then he matured his whiskey, not once, but twice, uniquely balancing the smoothness of Irish whiskey with the sweetness of bourbon for a lingering warm finish, creating a taste that kept winning against the old masters, including being world's best single-grain whiskey. That's 29 awards in just over 10 years. Not that we're counting. Baines, Mastery Remastered.
This is still Africa Good Morning on a Monday, and now it's time for us to dive into your sports news, the only way we know how, by having a chat with Ari Hochad in South Africa. Good morning, Ari. How's it going?
Yes, very good morning, Ashwin. Nice to talk to you. Lovely Monday here in Cape Town.
Lovely Monday. It certainly looks gorgeous over there. Ari, over the weekend we had the FA Cup. Get into that and give us everything else you've got.
Yes, it's always a big event on the world football calendar, especially the British football calendar. And it was the FA Cup that was played at Wembley Stadium in London. And it was a great story. It's Leicester City that won their first title ever. They beat Chelsea in the final by one goal to nil. And it was a great win for Leicester City. In their history, a few times in the 60s, actually 4 times in the 50s and the 60s, they lost finals of the FA Cup, so it was their first one ever in history of more than 100 years, and a great story for them. But they also won the Premier League a few years ago. In 2009, they were still playing in the third league in England and came up to the Premier League 2014, and then won the Premier League and now the FA Cup. So a great story for them. They also went through a lot. Their owner died in a helicopter crash a few years ago at the stadium, leaving the stadium, and just the helicopter crashed outside the stadium. So a great story for Leicester. Glad for them that they could make it. But now they need to focus on another game tomorrow in the English Premier League. They try to get in the top 4 of the English Premier League still. That is to qualify for the Champions League. That is very lucrative, and all the clubs try to do that. And they play Chelsea again. So it's Leicester City playing Chelsea again. It's very tight on the top position 4, 5, and 6 at the moment. 3, 4, 5 actually. It's Chelsea, Leicester City, and Liverpool. So the one that loses tomorrow night between Leicester City and Chelsea is under pressure, especially if Liverpool keeps on winning. Liverpool last night, dramatic win in the 95th minute, the last seconds of the game. It was the goalkeeper, Alisson, that came up all the way from his goalpost to score on the other side of the field with a header to win 2-1 against West Brom. So that put all the pressure onto Leicester and Chelsea. So that's all the football news. And let's go over to some golf news. And there was some golf played in South Africa, the Women's South African Open. But firstly, let's go to Port Elizabeth. It was the Mandela Bay Classic. That is for the seniors. and it was Chris Williams that won with the score of +2. The wind was blowing quite a bit over the weekend there, and James Kingston also did well. And Chris Williams and James Kingston, they will go on to play in the US Senior Open next week or in 2 weeks' time. And then in South Africa, the South African Women's Open was played. That is Chris Williams there with a nice trophy that he won. And he's on his way to the US Open together with James Kingston. And they will represent Southern Africa in a very prestigious tournament. And then also quickly that I can mention the Women's Open, the South African Women's Open was played at Westlake Golf Course in Cape Town. I know Saturday was a very wet day in Cape Town. It was raining the whole day, so it was difficult for them to play. But the news from that yesterday was that Leanne Pace of South Africa won the SA Open. That's her 4th Open, and a great one for her. On to some tennis news. That is Ashley Barty. She's the world number 1. Played in the Italian Open that finished yesterday for men's and women. Ashley Barty unfortunately had to retire injured in the quarterfinals in a game 2 days ago, so she didn't play in the final. And in the final of the women's section, it was the teenager Iga Swiatek of Poland. We can remember her name. She won the French Open last year. And she beat Caroline Pliskova of Czechoslovakia. Pliskova is a very good player. She is number 9 in the world. And it was Swiatek that beat her in the final 6-love, 6-love. Not often that you get a 6-love, 6-love, 6-0, 6-0 score in a final of such a big tournament. So a big one for Iga Swiatek. And then in the men's section, it was Rafael Nadal that beat Novak Djokovic in the final. A tough final yesterday. The first set, Rafael Nadal won 7-5. Then Djokovic came back. He won the second set 6-1. And then in the deciding third set, it was Rafael Nadal that showed his class on clay. He won his 10th Italian Open in his home country. He's from Spain. He's from Spain, so he won the Italian Open the 10th time. And the third set was 6-3. So head-to-head, the two of them, Djokovic and Nadal, have played, interestingly enough, 57 times, and it is now 29-28 to Djokovic, so a tight battle for them. Then quickly also some racing news, the Formula One, the Turkish Grand Prix has been cancelled because of COVID-19. They're not going to take place anymore late in June in Istanbul, so it was meant to be on the 25th, 26th of June, and now it's been replaced with another race in Austria. The teams are not too happy about that. They say that's already a very busy season. There's already 23 races. That will mean in June there will be 3 races on continuous weekends, and that would be the French Open, the French Grand Prix, then the Austrian Grand Prix, and then it's followed by another race at the same track in Austria. They call it the Styrian Grand Prix. So that is happening in the Formula One. And then lastly, just a little bit more golfing news. It was the British Masters golf tournament that was played in England. And a great story, Richard Bland, he's been a professional golf player for almost 28 years. He's 48 years old, and he won his first tournament. He won his first title. That's the British Masters. So Richard Bland won his first tournament after 478 starts in golf tournaments, his first pro victory at the age of 48, and a great win for him to win the British Masters. So there's hope for all of us that's a little bit over 40 and maybe a little bit over 50 as well. And just lastly, last night or early this morning, the Byron Nelson golf tournament in the USA, the PGA Tour, that finished, and it was J.H. Lee from South Korea that won on a total of -25. And good news for Southern Africa, in tied third place was Charles Schwartzel of South Africa. So that's all the golf news. You can see the sun rising up on my face here from the left over the mountains in Cape Town. And it was great talking sport again, and we talk more sport again on Friday. Have a great week, everyone.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Ari. Those have been our sports news coming from Ari Hogart. We certainly hope that everything was favorable for you. If not, stick around, the rest of the week, your sports news might improve. But right now, if you missed our top stories at the top of the hour, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back with those headlines. Africa Good Morning has been streaming live from 7 a.m. And if you missed the top stories at the top of the hour, here are some of the headlines. Zimbabwe court orders Chief Justice to retire in a blow for Mnangagwa. Hundreds rally in Tunisia in support of Palestinians. Ethiopia cancels June vote citing logistical setbacks. Congo sentences 30 to death over Ramadan clashes. Assessing the impact of COVID-19 on China-Africa economic relations. Those have been our stories.
Thank you very much for joining us on this Monday edition of Africa Good Morning. Do remember the show reruns again from 8 to 9 for your convenience. Also play your part. We can all beat COVID-19 together. On that note, it's all our love and all our light. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.
Take care.